They told me the mountains were peaceful. Quiet, they said. Simple. A good place to slow down, clear my head, leave the trauma of the city behind. I believed them. I packed up my apartment in Columbus, drove 4 hours south, and took a job as a paramedic in the Appalachian foothills, thinking the worst I'd deal with would be tractor accidents and the occasional heart attack. But that first night changed everything. It was close to midnight when the call came in. A 911 dispatcher's voice crackled through the radio, distorted with static. Medical emergency. Pine Hollow Ridge, unknown male, unresponsive. That was it. No other details. No address. Just a set of GPS coordinates and a nervous tone in the dispatcher's voice I didn't understand at the time. I looked at Rachel, my new partner, who'd been in this region her whole life. She stared at the radio for a long moment, unmoving. Her face had gone pale. "You've been here longer than I have," I said, trying to sound calm. "You know Pine Hollow?" She hesitated, then nodded once. "Yeah, I know it." We climbed into the rig and pulled out, winding through narrow roads swallowed by trees. The headlights cut long beams through the mist. The deeper we drove, the more I noticed how the woods pressed in on the road, like they didn't want us there. "You okay?" I asked. Rachel didn't look at me. Her hands tightened on the steering wheel. "They shouldn't have sent us to Pine Hollow," she muttered. "Not this late." "What do you mean?" "There's rules," she said, almost under her breath. "We don't go to Pine Hollow after dark." That was the first time I heard anyone say anything about rules. I thought she was joking. Locals are superstitious, sure, but I'd heard that kind of talk before in rural areas. Ghost stories, old wives' tales, things meant to keep kids from wandering too far. But Rachel wasn't smiling. When we reached the ridge, the road turned to gravel, then to dirt. The ambulance shook as we climbed the incline, the trees now towering above us like watchmen. My GPS flickered. The signal died completely. Then finally we saw him. A man, lying in a small clearing. He was barefoot, dressed in jeans and a flannel shirt soaked through with sweat. He was curled on his side in the fetal position, breathing shallow, eyes wide open, but staring at nothing. The strangest part? He was lying in the center of a perfectly shaped circle, made of twigs, stones, feathers, and what looked like deer bones. Nothing disturbed. Not even a single broken line in the dirt. I grabbed my gear bag and stepped toward him, but Rachel caught my arm. "Don't step inside," she said quickly. I looked at her. "What?" "The circle," she whispered. "Go around it." I stared at her, trying to read if this was another local ritual or a prank on the new guy. But she was serious. Her face was stiff, voice low. I nodded slowly and crouched beside the man, careful to stay outside the edge. "Sir," I said, flashing my penlight in his eyes. "Can you hear me?" No reaction. No blinking. I reached out, checked his pulse, faint but steady. No sign of trauma. No blood. No drugs or paraphernalia. Just a man in a circle, looking like he'd seen something too big to understand. "Do you know your name?" I asked. Still nothing. But his lips were moving. Just barely. I leaned in. His voice was dry, like leaves dragging across stone. "She said don't answer." "What did you say?" "She said don't answer the call, not after the whistling." Rachel was already pulling back, walking toward the ambulance. I looked up, startled. "We need to get him on the stretcher," I said. She shook her head. "We need to go. We can't leave him here. He broke the rule, George." I froze. "What rule?" She didn't answer. Her eyes were on the treetops, where a strange wind had started to blow, though none of the branches moved. Then I heard it. A sound I can only describe as a whistle, but not from any mouth I've ever known. It was too long, too smooth, like wind being pulled through hollow bone. It came from every direction, and none at once. The man's body jolted violently. Then he went still. His eyes stared into mine, wide open. And for a moment, I swear I saw something moving inside them. Not a reflection. Something else. We lifted him together, Rachel shaking the entire time, and loaded him into the back. By the time we reached the hospital, he was gone. No trauma. No known cause of death. No ID. The nurse called him a John Doe. The coroner said cardiac arrest, but his heart was strong. Too strong. I didn't sleep that night. Couldn't stop thinking about the circle. The whistle. His final words. The next morning, I found a note inside my locker. It wasn't signed. Just 5 words written in messy handwriting on a torn scrap of paper. "Don't break the rules, rookie." And beneath that, a list. Never answer calls after 2:13 a.m. Never speak the names of the lost. Never go into the holler alone. Never follow the whistler. Never step into the circle. I read the last line twice. My stomach twisted. Someone knew. Someone had been watching. And somehow, I had already broken one of the rules. The next morning, the mountain fog hung low like a tired breath, clinging to the trees and curling around the corners of our little outpost. I sat on the porch steps, nursing a stale cup of coffee that tasted more like damp wood than caffeine, watching the mist roll through the valley like it had something to hide. Rachel showed up just after sunrise, boots muddy, jacket soaked, looking like she'd wrestled a bear and lost. She tossed her gear into the corner locker without a word and sat next to me, lighting a cigarette with hands that shook just slightly. "Rough night?" I asked. She stared out into the trees before answering. "We lost another one. Old Man Kane." "What happened?" She exhaled smoke slowly. "They said he left his porch after hearing something call his name. Walked right into the woods barefoot. They found him in the creek. Eyes open. No heartbeat." I raised an eyebrow. "Stroke?" She didn't look at me. "Broke the rule." I blinked. "What rule?" She turned, finally meeting my gaze. Her eyes were bloodshot and heavy. "Never answer a voice after midnight if it speaks your name." I let out a dry laugh. "You serious?" Rachel didn't smile. She took another drag and said nothing. I thought she was messing with me. Maybe some kind of local hazing ritual for the new guy from out of town. But she didn't have that teasing tone. She looked tired, worn down like something had been gnawing on her for years, and she was just waiting for it to finish. "You all really believe in this stuff out here?" I asked. "Believe," she said. "No. Belief's too soft a word. Out here, we remember." That shut me up for a second. I watched a raven settle on the edge of the ambulance bay. It stared right at me like it was listening. Rachel crushed her cigarette under her boot and stood up. "Come on. We've got to restock Unit 3. And wipe it down. The smell's still in there." "What smell?" She didn't answer. I followed her in. Our station was small, 2 ambulances, a storage room, and a common area with a battered couch and a TV that mostly played static. I'd worked in big cities where the chaos was loud, constant, predictable. But this place was quiet in a way that made your ears ring. And that silence was always waiting to be filled with something worse. Inside the garage bay, Unit 3 sat like a sleeping animal. I opened the back doors and gagged. The coppery stench of dried blood hit me in the face, though the last report had said no visible trauma. "Jesus, what happened here?" I asked, backing away. Rachel climbed in like it was nothing. "He was screaming when we brought him in. Not words, just noise. But the sound, it got inside your head. We hosed it down. Doesn't matter. You're telling me a man screamed himself to death?" I asked, half laughing, half hoping for a punchline. Rachel gave me a long look, then said quietly, "Sometimes things follow the ambulance back." That made my skin crawl. I looked around as if something might be lurking in the corners. She handed me a bottle of bleach and some gloves. "Wipe down the gurney. If anything's still here, it won't like the smell." We worked in silence for a while. My hands moved, but my mind was racing. Finally, I asked, "That list in the locker room. The one with all the weird rules. Don't go into the holler alone. Don't answer calls after 2:13 a.m. Is that a joke? Some twisted paramedic folklore?" Rachel stopped wiping. She sat back on her heels and looked at me, serious as the grave. "No joke," she said. "Every rule is there because someone broke it, and didn't come back." I wanted to press her, to ask for stories, for proof, for something to make it all make sense. But the look on her face told me I wouldn't like the answers. Instead, I nodded and kept scrubbing. Later that day, after we'd cleaned the rig and stocked the trauma kits, Rachel pulled me aside and handed me a small, folded piece of paper. Her hands were steady again, her face unreadable. I opened it. Written in the same jagged handwriting as the locker wall were 10 rules. No explanation. No context. Just the rules. At the bottom, in darker ink, were 5 words. "The mountain always collects late." That night, I didn't sleep well. I kept thinking about the man in the circle. And the sound of my name in the trees. The forest was breathing again. I could hear it in the way the wind moved through the trees, soft and deliberate, like lungs slowly filling and emptying. The headlights of my ambulance cut through the darkness, painting narrow beams across a gravel road that looked more like a forgotten trail than a path meant for vehicles. Dispatch had sent me on a wellness check. Some old man out past Bear Creek hadn't been seen in days. No one in town seemed too worried, but the tone in the dispatcher's voice had changed when she said the name Liam Calhoun. There was a pause. Then, he's one of the old ones. Take care out there. I didn't ask questions. I'd already learned that the locals said less when something mattered more. It took me 20 minutes of crawling through switchbacks and fog to reach the cabin. The trees here grew closer together, their branches tangled like they were whispering secrets to each other. My GPS had died 5 minutes ago, and my radio buzzed with only static, the kind that somehow made you feel watched. I parked and stepped out, flashlight in hand. The beam cut through the mist, and I spotted the cabin sitting low in the clearing, its roof sagging like a tired old man. The windows were dark. The door hung slightly ajar. EMS. I called out, my voice louder than I expected in the quiet. Mr. Calhoun? Liam? You all right? No answer. Only the wind, brushing the trees like fingers over a drum. I approached slowly, every crunch of gravel under my boots sounding like a crack of thunder. I reached the porch, noticed the salt lines spread across the threshold, and hesitated. Salt. Just like the circles around that man who died. Hello? I tried again. The door creaked wider before I even touched it. I stepped inside, expecting the sharp smell of rot or mildew. But it was clean. Cold. Still. Like no one had lived here for years. Then I heard the voice. You're early. It came from the back of the cabin, deep and gravelly but clear. I turned, flashlight cutting across the room, and there he was. Liam Calhoun sat in an old rocking chair by the fireplace, a thin blanket over his lap, a shotgun resting against the armrest. He didn't look surprised to see me. In fact, he looked like he'd been expecting me. You're the new one, he said, not a question. I nodded slowly. George Tiller. Paramedic. He smiled without warmth. You're not from here. No, sir. Transferred from Cincinnati. That why you keep breaking the rules? I froze. My mouth opened, but nothing came out. Liam's eyes narrowed. You think those little guidelines in your locker were jokes? City boy hazing. I don't know what I thought, I admitted. I've seen weird things, and I can't explain any of it. You will, he said. Eventually. Or you won't live long enough to. He stood, bones creaking like old wood, and walked to the window. He didn't look out. Just stood there, still. There's something in these hills, he said softly. Older than the trees. Older than the blood in our veins. We made a deal a long time ago. Keep to the rules, and it leaves us be. But every now and then, some fool forgets. I felt a chill slide down my spine. What happens when they forget? He turned to face me. His eyes were sharp now, clear and fierce. They disappear. Sometimes quick, sometimes slow. Sometimes they don't even know they're already gone. My throat felt dry. And the rules? He walked to the table and picked up a yellowed piece of paper, handed it to me. Scrawled in faded ink were 7 simple lines. Never answer a call after 2:13 a.m. Never go alone into the holler. Don't speak the names of the taken. Ignore the whistling, do not follow it. Salt the thresholds. Every night. Don't let them see you bleed. If the forest goes silent, run. I stared at it. The air in the cabin felt heavier now, like the walls themselves were listening. These aren't just superstitions, Liam said. They're warnings. And you'd better start listening. I looked up at him, trying to read his face. Why me? Why tell me this? Because I broke one once, he said quietly. And I've been paying ever since. He walked past me, back to his chair, and sat down slowly. Go home, George, he said. Before the mountain decides you're not worth saving. I didn't argue. I backed out of the cabin and into the cold night. The wind had stopped. The trees stood still. And in the distance, just faintly, I heard something whistling. A slow, rising note that wasn't made by wind or bird or man. I didn't turn toward it. I didn't move at all. I just stood there, holding that crumpled piece of paper like a lifeline, realizing that in this place, silence wasn't peace. It was a warning. And it was already too late for me to pretend nothing was wrong. I should have stopped her. It's the thought that plays on repeat in my head every night since Rachel disappeared. I should have told her not to go alone. I should have listened when she warned me. But I didn't, and now she's gone. That night started like any other. We'd just gotten back from a long haul, a car wreck out by Burnt Mill Road, where a guy had wrapped his truck around a sycamore. He lived, thank God, but barely. We cleaned the rig, restocked supplies, and sat in the quiet of the outpost kitchen. The generator hummed. Rain tapped against the tin roof. Rachel poured herself a cup of black coffee and stared out the fogged window. You ever hear that whistling again? I asked, trying to sound casual. She didn't answer right away. Then she said, yeah, last week. I looked at her. And I locked the doors, turned out the lights. I don't whistle back. That's the rule. I half smiled, half scoffed. Who made up these rules, anyway? She didn't smile back. They were written long before we got here, George. We were both tired. Bone tired. The kind of tired that makes the world feel like it's underwater. So when the call came in, static crackled and full of broken syllables, I almost didn't notice the time. 2:11 a.m. That should have been the first red flag. The dispatcher's voice sounded wrong. Not like Karen, our usual overnight dispatcher. This voice had a strange echo to it, like someone speaking through a tunnel. Single vehicle rollover. North Hollow Ridge, requesting assistance. Rachel grabbed her coat. I blinked. North Hollow? That's... I know where it is, she said quickly, not meeting my eyes. I stepped in front of her. Rachel, wait. That place is... I've been before. It's probably nothing. One of the logging trucks. We go together. She hesitated. Protocol says only one responder required. It'll be quicker if I go. You can prep the trauma bay in case they need medevac. I should have argued harder, but I let her go. She climbed into the ambulance, gave me a tired smile, and drove off into the dark. That was the last time I saw her. I tried raising her on the radio 20 minutes later. Nothing. Just static. I waited an hour, telling myself she hit a dead zone or got held up. But my gut twisted tighter and tighter. By 4 a.m., I couldn't take it anymore. I radioed dispatch, but they claimed no such call was sent out. No record. No logs. Nothing. I drove out to North Hollow Ridge myself, dawn just breaking. Mist clung low over the ground, like it didn't want the sun to come in. I found the ambulance on the side of a dirt road, engine still running. Driver's side door open. Headlights on. Rachel was gone. No blood. No signs of a struggle. Just gone. Except for the windshield. Someone, or something, had scrawled a message across the fogged glass, written with a shaking finger. Rule 2. I stared at it, my breath caught in my throat. I didn't know what Rule 2 was. Not then. But I remembered that old list I found in the locker, the one scratched into the metal door with a penknife. The second line. Never speak the names of the lost. I backed away from the ambulance, heart pounding, whispering her name before I remembered. And then the trees moved. No wind. No animals. Just trees shifting. Leaning. Like they were listening. I don't know how I made it back to the station. My mind was spinning. My hands wouldn't stop shaking. I tried writing a report. I tried calling her family. I tried explaining to dispatch what happened. But how do you tell people the forest took your partner because of a rule you didn't even believe in? They'll say Rachel disappeared on a call. They'll say it was an accident. Maybe she ran off. Maybe she snapped. But I know better now. She broke a rule. Or maybe I did. Maybe we both did. And the mountain, it doesn't forgive. It just waits. And listens. And takes. I found Liam at the edge of the woods just after sunset, standing like a shadow between the trees. He wasn't hard to find. He wanted to be found. The sun had dipped behind the hills, painting the sky a soft bruised purple. I left the ambulance idling at the edge of the gravel road, its headlights cutting a pale path through the mist. The air smelled like pine sap and rain-soaked earth, thick and heavy with something else I couldn't name, like the scent of forgotten things. Liam didn't turn when I approached. He just stood there, staring into the trees like he was listening to them breathe. You knew, didn't you? I said, my voice breaking the quiet. You knew Rachel was going to disappear. He didn't answer right away. I stepped closer, my boots crunching twigs. He was thin, bones pressing against worn flannel, skin pale, and stretched like old paper. When he finally turned, I saw that same haunted look in his eyes. But this time, something else had joined it, pity. You still think this is about ghosts and old stories? He said softly. Still think you're above it all? I clenched my fists. Tell me what's going on. No more riddles. No more warnings. I want the truth. Liam looked at me for a long moment, then nodded once and motioned for me to follow. We walked deeper into the woods. No flashlight. Just the faint glow of the sky above and the crunch of leaves underfoot. The trees thickened around us like a cage, their branches curling like fingers. After maybe 10 minutes, we reached a small clearing. At its center was an old fire pit, long cold, ringed by smooth stones that had symbols carved into them. Spirals, jagged lines, shapes I didn't recognize. Liam sat on a moss-covered log and pointed to the stones. This is where they made the pact, he said. Long time ago. Before paramedics, before roads, before any of this. I stayed standing. I didn't trust the ground beneath my feet anymore. What pact? He looked up at me, and I saw it then, real fear. Not the kind you show when something's chasing you. The kind that stays in your bones long after the danger's gone. There's something under this mountain, he said. Something that doesn't sleep like we do. It listens. It watches. And when people stop respecting the old ways, it reminded them. He tapped one of the stones. A long time ago, the people here lost whole families. Children would wander off and never return. Grown men would vanish with no sound. Animals refused to go near certain hollers. So the elders, healers, midwives, whatever you want to call them, they came here. And they made a deal. He paused, and I felt the wind pick up, soft but cold, like a whisper brushing the back of my neck. A sacrifice? Not blood, Liam said. Not then. They offered structure. Boundaries. Rules. Things that kept people out of certain places, kept them quiet after dark, made them show respect. He looked at me, and his eyes were glassy. Over time, the rules turned into stories. Then jokes. Then forgotten altogether. But the thing under the mountain? It never forgot. I sat down slowly, my legs shaky. I didn't want to believe him. But deep down, something inside me already did. What does this have to do with Rachel? Liam lowered his head. She broke the second rule. Never say their names out loud. The ones who disappeared. Not once. Not even in prayer. My breath caught. We were just talking. It doesn't care why you do it, he said. Only that you do. Silence fell again. I could hear the hum of the wind through the trees. Somewhere in the distance, an owl called out. I was a paramedic here too, Liam whispered. 20 years ago. I broke a rule. Lost my partner because of it. I tried to warn people. Tried to stop it. But no one listens until it's too late. I looked at him, really looked. You've been living in fear all this time? No, he said. Not fear. Responsibility. There's a difference. He pulled something from his coat pocket and handed it to me. It was a small slip of paper, yellowed and frayed. On it, written in thick black ink, were 7 rules. Never answer calls after 2:13 a.m. Never speak the names of the lost. Never go into the holler alone. Never follow the whistler. Always leave the door open when someone knocks after midnight. Never cut the vines near the water's edge. If you hear your own voice in the woods, run. I stared at the list. How many of these have I broken already? I asked. Liam looked at me with a tired smile. More than you want to know. But not more than you can survive. Yet. I felt a chill settle into my bones. What do I do now? He stood. You keep the rules. You spread them. You pay attention. Or you end up like the rest of us, whispers in the trees. And with that, he turned and walked back into the woods, swallowed by the dark. I sat there long after he left, holding the list, listening to the silence. Except, it wasn't silent anymore. Somewhere far off, too faint to be real, I thought I heard a whistle. Low, slow, and getting closer. I didn't move. I didn't breathe. And I didn't speak. The call came in just after sunset. A quiet little voice crackled over the radio, broken up by static. Please, my daughter's sleepwalking again. She's outside. She won't stop walking toward the woods. That was all. No location, no name, no follow-up. Just silence. But something about the voice, it sounded strained, like the person on the other end was whispering through tears. Maybe even fear. I was alone that night. Rachel was still gone, and by then, nobody really talked about it anymore. Just sideways glances and cold silences. I'd searched the back roads, questioned the locals, even called in a favor to a deputy in the next county. But nothing. She was just gone. I checked the logs. No record of the call. No caller ID. Dispatch claimed they hadn't heard anything. I went anyway. The place was about 30 minutes out, past a crumbling bridge and an old Baptist church with broken windows. I only found the house because I noticed a porch light blinking weakly in the distance, barely visible through the mist. It was a one-story shack swallowed by trees, the kind of place time forgot. A tired-looking man met me at the door. Mid-40s, hollow eyes, days-old stubble. She's in the back, he said. His voice cracked like he hadn't used it in days. Just started walking again like last time. I followed him through the dark house. No pictures on the walls. No sounds. Just the soft ticking of a grandfather clock that didn't show the right time. In the backyard, a little girl stood barefoot on the grass. Maybe 7 or 8 years old. She was in a thin nightgown, facing the woods, eyes wide open but blank. Her arms hung loosely at her sides. She was walking forward. One slow step at a time. straight toward the tree line. I knelt beside her and gently placed my hand on her shoulder. "Hey, sweetheart," I said. "It's okay. Let's go back inside." She didn't even blink. And then she whispered something, so soft I almost didn't hear it. "He's calling me." "Who?" I asked. "Who's calling you?" She raised her hand and pointed toward the trees. And that's when I heard it. A faint, high-pitched whistle. Not a tune. Not music. Just a single, drawn-out note. It rose and felt like it was breathing. But there was something wrong with it, something not human. The girl began to move again. I turned to the father. "What is that? Who's out there?" He didn't look at me. He just stared at the trees, trembling. "She heard the whistler last night," he said. "Now it's too late." I didn't know what to do. My instincts screamed to grab the girl and run, but my feet felt heavy, like the ground itself was warning me not to move. I wrapped the girl in a blanket from my truck and carried her back inside. As I stepped through the doorway, the whistle stopped. Instantly, like it had been watching me. Inside the house, I sat her down gently on the couch. She blinked once, twice, and started to cry. She couldn't remember anything. Not the trees, not the whisper, not the whistle. The father thanked me without looking me in the eye. He wouldn't speak another word after that. As I turned to leave, the front door creaked open, and a gust of cold air swept through. Standing just outside was an old woman in a black shawl. She had deep lines in her face, eyes sharp as glass. "You heard it," she said. I hesitated. "Heard what?" She stepped closer and placed something in my hand. It was a little pouch made of deer hide, sewn shut with what looked like human hair. "Keep your ears closed at night," she whispered. "The mountain's changing." I wanted to ask her what she meant, but when I looked up, she was already walking into the woods, the trees swallowing her whole. Back in the truck, I sat for a long time. I didn't start the engine. I didn't turn on the radio. I just sat there listening, and I swear I heard it again. That same whistle. Only this time it sounded closer. I couldn't sleep. It had been 2 nights since Rachel disappeared, and the silence in the outpost was louder than any siren I'd ever heard. Her bed was still made. Her name still on the whiteboard schedule. Her favorite coffee mug, chipped at the rim, sat on the sink like she'd be back any minute. But she wasn't coming back. I knew that. And that ambulance we found, empty, doors open, that word scrawled across the dash in what looked like dried blood. Rule 2, it was starting to feel like something more than a coincidence. I needed answers. Real ones. Not Liam's whispers in the woods. Not the townspeople's half-muttered warnings. So sometime around 2 a.m., I went into the storage room at the back of the station. The door creaked like it hadn't been opened in years. Dust floated in the air like ash, catching the beam of my flashlight. Inside were old dispatch records, call logs, and handwritten journals from medics who worked the mountain before me. Some of the boxes dated back to the 80s. I pulled out a few and sat down on the cold concrete floor. The first box was boring stuff, training logs, radio maintenance notes, some faded shift schedules. But then I opened a file labeled Calls, Winter 1996. That's when things started to get weird. Half the pages were gone, ripped clean from the binder. Others were blacked out with heavy strokes of marker, names, locations, and even times. One entry just said, February 14th, do not respond, Station 3 lost. That was it. No details. No signature. Just those 5 words. I flipped through more folders. Same thing. July 3rd, 2002, answered after 2:13 a.m. Gone. October 9th, 2011, broke Rule 4. Screaming over radio. No return. Page after page like that. Some were water damaged. Others had smudges of what looked like dried mud, or maybe blood, though I didn't want to test that theory. There was one folder buried under the rest. No label. Just a red string tied around it. Inside was a stack of yellowed paper, handwritten in tight, shaky letters. The first page was a letter. If you're reading this, you're already too close. I froze. The handwriting was neat but frantic, like whoever wrote it had been in a rush, or terrified. I read on. The rules aren't superstition. They're warnings. Boundaries. We made a pact to keep it asleep. Every time one of us breaks the rules, it wakes up a little more. Liam tried to stop it. I tried too. But no one listens. They all think we're crazy until the sirens start again. Until someone doesn't come back. It wasn't signed. But at the bottom, someone had scribbled a list. The same rules I'd found carved into the back of my locker weeks ago. Only this time there were more. Rule 1. never answer a call after 2:13 a.m. Rule 2, never go into the holler alone. Rule 3, if you hear whistling, don't follow. Rule 4, don't speak the names of the lost. Rule 5, don't let it know your name. My throat went dry. I remembered Rachel calling my name on the radio before she vanished. Clear as day. George, do you copy? George, I see someone. Wait, who or why? Static. And now this. Don't let it know your name. I sat back against the wall, paper shaking in my hands. I felt cold all over, like something had crawled under my skin. It wasn't just superstition. It wasn't just Liam's madness. They knew. The ones before me. They knew something was out there in the mountains, something that watched, waited, and listened. And we'd all been breaking the rules. Every single shift. I didn't hear anything at first, just the hum of the outpost lights and the rustle of wind outside. But then, somewhere off in the trees beyond the station, I heard it. A low, slow whistle. Not a tune. Not a bird. Just 4 long notes. Like it was calling. And I swear to God, it whistled my name. The call came in at 2:11 a.m. 2 minutes before the cursed hour. That alone should have been enough to make me let the radio buzz and go dead like I'd done the past few nights. But something about this one was different. There was a name attached. Rachel. Her voice came through the static, barely a whisper, but I knew it was her. George, it's cold. I'm in the holler. Come quick. That was impossible. Rachel had been gone for weeks. Maybe longer. I'd stopped counting after day 9. They called off the search after finding her jacket shredded and hanging from a tree 20 feet off the ground. But now she was calling to me from the holler. The rule was clear. Rule 3, never go into the holler alone. It wasn't even the most cryptic of the rules. Everyone knew that stretch of land was off limits. Locals didn't hunt there. Kids didn't play there. GPS wouldn't work past the tree line. And yet, there I was, shoving my gear into the rig and starting the engine. The air felt heavier than usual. Not cold exactly, but thick, like I was driving through soup instead of mountain air. Fog slithered across the road, curling around the tires like fingers. The headlights could barely cut through it. As I turned off the paved road onto the dirt trail that led toward the holler, my radio crackled again. It wasn't Rachel this time. It was a man's voice. You break this one, George. You don't come back. Liam. I stopped the rig. He was just there, standing in the middle of the trail. No flashlight. No coat. His face pale in the glow of my headlights. I rolled down the window. Move, Liam. You don't understand what's waiting in there, he said, stepping closer. His eyes were sunken. Wild. It doesn't want you. It wants out. And you're just the key. I should have told him to get lost. Should have thrown the rig in reverse and peeled back down the trail. But something in his face stopped me. He reached into his coat and pulled out a silver medical bag. Old, beaten, but polished to a shine. This belonged to the first paramedic to break the rules, he said. He thought it would protect him. Maybe it will protect you. Maybe not. I took it. It was heavier than I expected. Cold, like it had been buried in snow. Liam looked past me toward the holler. If you hear it whisper your name, don't answer. And whatever you do, don't look back. Then he vanished into the woods. Just like that. One blink, and he was gone. I sat there for a moment, gripping the wheel, the silver bag on the passenger seat. My heart was hammering like a drum in a funeral procession. And then I drove in. The road narrowed until tree branches scraped both sides of the ambulance. The fog got thicker. The radio turned to white noise, then went silent. The headlights began to flicker. And then, just past an old, rotting fence post, the road disappeared entirely. The holler didn't welcome you. It swallowed you. I killed the engine and stepped out. I didn't bother calling dispatch. There'd be no record of this anyway. No one ever found anything in the holler. Just blood. Or bones. Or nothing at all. The silence was wrong. Not peaceful. Not quiet. It was listening. I walked with the silver bag slung over my shoulder. The deeper I went, the more wrong the forest became. Trees grew at angles that didn't make sense. Moss grew on the tops of rocks. There was no undergrowth, no insects, no sound except the crunch of leaves under my boots. Then I saw her. Rachel. She was standing at the base of an old stone altar, her back to me, hair matted, her EMS jacket filthy. Her arms hung limp by her sides. Rachel. I called out. She turned slowly. Her eyes were completely black. George, she said, her voice like 2 voices layered on top of each other, hers and something else. You came. I stepped closer. My fingers tightened around the strap of the silver bag. You need to come back with me, I said. We'll get help. You're not well. She smiled. A slow, crooked thing that didn't reach her eyes. There is no help. You broke the rule. And then I heard it. The whisper. It didn't come from Rachel. It came from behind me. George? Soft. Like someone breathing my name into the back of my neck. I froze. The whisper came again. George, come see. Every instinct screamed at me to turn around. But Liam's warning rang louder. Don't look back. So I didn't. Instead, I unclipped the silver bag and opened it. Inside was a single item, a mirror. Not a big one, just the size of a clipboard, its edges wrapped in leather. I held it up and angled it behind me. What I saw made my knees go weak. There was something standing behind me. Tall. Twisted. Its face was a blur of mouths and eyes, all shifting. Bones stuck out at odd angles. Long fingers reached toward my neck, not touching, tasting. It wasn't solid. Not fully. It looked like it was stitched together from fog and shadow. The thing leaned close to the mirror. And for a moment, I swear it saw itself. It screamed. Not through my ears, but in my mind. The scream shattered thought. I dropped the mirror, fell to my knees. When I looked up, the forest was dark. Silent. Rachel was gone. The altar was crumbled, overgrown with vines that hadn't been there seconds ago. I stumbled back the way I came. The ambulance was still there, lights flickering like a dying heartbeat. I didn't see Liam again that night. But I knew he'd been right. The rules weren't about control. They were about survival. And I had broken one. Now I had to wonder, what would the price be? I should have turned back the moment the radio went dead. The call had come in just after midnight, faint, broken by static. A single word, help. That was it. No location, no name, just a trembling voice gasping for help. I should have known better. I'd read the rules. I'd broken them before. But this felt different. Personal. Like it knew I was listening. I grabbed the silver medical bag Liam had given me. He told me it wasn't meant for healing. That it was meant for binding. I didn't believe him then. I wanted to believe in protocols and first aid kits, not talismans and curses. But that night, under a heavy sky and a full moon that looked bruised and sickly, I took the bag anyway. The holler was silent. No wind. No birds. Just the crunch of gravel beneath my boots and the distant, unnatural hum of something deep underground. The trees leaned in too close, like they were eavesdropping. Every step felt heavier the farther I went. The forest was thick, choking the path in vines and shadows. I had to force my way through, ducking under branches, stepping over old bones. Animal, I told myself. Had to be. Then I saw the altar. It was older than anything I'd seen out here. A slab of stone, half buried in the moss, carved with symbols I didn't recognize. A circle of withered trees surrounded it, their trunks twisted, almost as if they had turned away from the stone in fear. At the base of the altar, candles flickered, though I hadn't lit them. I don't know who did. Or what? The air grew thick. My chest felt tight, like I was breathing water. And then the voices came. Whispers at first. Soft, like breath against my neck. Then louder, chanting, weeping, laughing. Dozens of them, maybe hundreds. Some sounded like men, others like children. Some didn't sound human at all. I clutched the silver bag tighter. My hands were shaking. A shape moved in the trees. No, it unfolded from the trees. Too tall, too thin. Skin like smoke, and eyes that weren't eyes at all, just holes where light went to die. It didn't walk. It hovered, gliding closer. Every branch it passed under curled and blackened like paper in a flame. It didn't speak. Not with a voice. It entered my thoughts. You broke the rules, George. I fell to my knees. My head screamed with pressure, like 1,000 nails tapping the inside of my skull. You took what wasn't yours. You heard the whistle. You followed it. You opened the door. I didn't mean to, I whispered, barely able to breathe. I just wanted to help. Laughter. Cold and hollow. There is no help. Only hunger. And the mountain must eat. The earth around the altar cracked. Roots tore up through the soil like claws. I saw faces in the bark, Rachel, the others who vanished. Their mouths were open, screaming without sound. I reached into the silver bag. Inside was a small glass vial, filled with black liquid. Thick, moving on its own. Liam had told me, break it only when you stand at the gate. I didn't know what that meant, but this felt like a gate. The creature hovered closer. The whispers turned into shrieks. The trees groaned and bent toward me. I could feel heat rising from the altar like breath. I smashed the vial. The liquid hissed as it hit the stone, spreading like ink in water. The whispers stopped. The entity froze. Then everything exploded in white. I was thrown back, hit the ground hard. For a moment, all I could hear was the crackle of fire and something distant, like chains snapping. When I opened my eyes, the altar was gone. So was the creature. The trees stood still. The air was clear. But Liam was there. He was on his knees beside where the altar had been, hands pressed to the earth, eyes closed. His face was pale. His voice barely a whisper. It's sealed. For now. I crawled over to him. Liam, what did you do? He looked at me, eyes heavy with sorrow. You broke the rules, George. But you did what I couldn't. You faced it. You chose others over yourself. His skin started to flake, like ash caught in a breeze. Wait, what's happening to you? I tried to grab him, but my hand passed through him like mist. This was my debt. I've carried it too long. Now it's yours. And just like that, he was gone. The forest was silent again. I stood there for a long time, staring at the spot where he vanished. I don't remember walking back. My legs carried me somehow, through the dark, through the cold, back to the station. But I wasn't the same. Something had changed. Something was watching. And deep in the holler, beneath the roots and stone, I knew it was still there. Sleeping. Waiting. Hungering. I don't remember walking back. One moment, I was standing in that hollow, surrounded by stone and fog, my ears ringing with the screams of something that never had a name. The next, I was limping down the narrow trail behind the outpost, covered in dried mud and blood that wasn't all mine. The sun was rising. Pale orange light filtered through the trees like it was afraid to touch the ground. Birds sang somewhere far off, and for the first time in days, I heard no whispering, no whistling, just silence and my own heartbeat. The outpost door was unlocked. I must have left it that way, though I couldn't remember doing it. Inside, the station looked just as I left it, coffee pot half full, radio dead, Rachel's jacket still hanging on the hook by the door. I dropped the silver medical bag Liam gave me onto the floor. I hadn't opened it. Didn't dare. I don't know what would have happened if I had. Maybe I would have found salvation inside. Maybe damnation. Either way, I didn't want to know. I collapsed into the chair by the radio and stared at it for a long time. The static was gone. Just silence. I turned the knob. Nothing. The clock on the wall ticked once, then stopped. 2:13 a.m. The time of the calls. I pulled the battery out and threw it across the room. After a while, I got up and washed the blood off my hands. I scrubbed until my knuckles were raw. Then I took out a marker and walked over to the back wall of the station. There was an old whiteboard there. We used to write call summaries on it. Now it was blank, except for a smudge in the corner. Rachel's handwriting, faded and almost unreadable. I picked up the marker and began to write. Not a story. Not a confession. Rules. The ones I could remember. The ones that mattered. Don't answer calls after 2:13 a.m. Don't speak the names of the lost. Don't go into the holler. Ever. Don't follow the whistler. If Liam calls, you're already too late. Burn the clothes you wore on your last call. Always leave an offering at the marker stone. Don't open the silver bag. Never write down the last rule. I stared at that last one for a long time. My hand hovered over the board. I wanted to write it. I wanted someone else to see, to understand. But the moment I tried to form the words in my head, the lights flickered. The wind outside howled. And I heard Rachel's voice. Just for a second. She whispered, "Don't." So I didn't. I dropped the marker, walked outside, and stood on the porch as the sun rose higher. The trees looked calm again. Peaceful almost. But I knew better. There was something under those roots. Something that wasn't sleeping. It was watching. Waiting. That day I stayed quiet. Didn't answer any calls. Didn't check the roads. I just waited. And that night, right when the clock would have struck 2:13, if I hadn't ripped it off the wall, I heard it again. The whistle. Soft. Low. Just outside the trees. I turned off the lights. Locked the doors. Sat down in the dark. And waited. It's been 6 months since the holler swallowed Liam. The outpost is quieter now. Not because the emergencies have stopped. If anything, they've gotten worse, but because I've stopped asking questions. Stopped chasing answers. Most nights, I sit on the porch after my shift, staring out into the trees, waiting for something I hope never comes. I keep the rule list on the wall now. Not tucked in a locker, not whispered during slow nights. It's written in bold red ink across the whiteboard by the front door. Every EMT who walks and sees it. The rules. Don't answer calls after 2:13 a.m. Never speak the names of the lost. Don't go into the holler alone. If you hear whistling, don't follow it. Always close the ambulance doors before you turn your back. There's a sixth rule. I haven't written it down. Today, a new guy showed up. Fresh from the city. Clean cut. Wide-eyed. His name's Josh. He shook my hand with too much confidence and looked around like he expected something more modern. "This is it?" he asked, glancing at the peeling paint, the radio with a mind of its own, the mountains pressing in on all sides. "This is it," I said. "Welcome to Station 9. He noticed the list, of course. Everyone does. "Are those real?" he asked, smirking. "Like hazing stuff?" I didn't smile back. "Read them. Know them." He laughed, a short bark of disbelief, and walked off to put his gear away. I watched him disappear down the hallway. He reminded me of me when I first arrived, thinking this place was all talk and no teeth. Later that night, I sat out back like I always do. The wind moved through the trees like something alive. The stars were hidden behind thick clouds, and the moon hung low and orange. My radio hissed faintly beside me, the way it sometimes does before something bad happens. I turned it off. That's when I heard it. Soft at first, almost like birdsong. Just a few high, sharp notes drifting on the air. I held my breath. The hairs on my neck stood up like pins in a map. The whistle. It was distant, coming from beyond the tree line. The same sound I heard the night Rachel vanished. The same sound I heard in the holler, when the wind stopped and the shadows opened. And now it was back. But this time it was closer. I didn't move. Didn't blink. Just stared into the dark, listening. The whistle repeated. 3 notes. Like someone calling a dog home. Behind me, I heard footsteps. Josh stepped out onto the porch, chewing on a protein bar, eyes squinting into the dark. "You hear that?" he asked, frowning. I didn't answer. "Is that whistling?" He started to step forward. I grabbed his arm, harder than I meant to. "No." He looked at me, confused. "Why not?" I stared at him. "Because it's not for you." The whistle came again. Louder this time. Closer. Josh blinked. "Okay, man. That's creepy." I didn't let go of his arm. "Go inside," I said. "Now." He looked at me like I was crazy. Maybe I am. But he listened. He went back in, mumbling under his breath, and I locked the door behind him. Outside, the whistle stopped. The trees were still again. I stayed there a while longer, waiting. Listening. Watching the dark. And as I turned to leave, I heard it, just once more. A whisper, not a sound. Not a word exactly, but something close. It sounded like my name. I didn't look back. I've learned better than that.